All right, recording has started. Hi, world. Hi, YouTube. Hi, folks. Hope you're doing good today. And here is a reaction video. And I know my channel is usually for gaming, but my name is a World War II historian, so I like history. A lot of history is happening right now as we speak. I found an interesting video about China today, and I figured let's watch it and let's react to it. By the way, the title of the video is Chinese Youth Are Crying, Can't Bear Anymore. Salaries in Beijing and Shanghai Hit an 8-year low. So apparently what a gentleman, Peter, what he was talking about, seems like it may actually be true. This whole thing of, you know, all the world economies right now are basically inflated. It's not just the United States. And as a result, we're dealing with a kind of a problem across the world in which no one is actually like, none of the nations have like a workforce that seems to be prepared for the coming change in like economy, change in demand. So we're about to have somewhat of like an implosion in a sense, and what we're seeing is employment may be more difficult. This may be like the next Great Depression, like we saw in the 1930s. And of course, that's not a good look for the world because it's going to make conditions that much harder for people. The silver lining, though, is that we have all this incredible technology. We have the internet. We have human beings that seem to be kind of like just realizing that like we just want a better life. For everyday people, just want a better life, and we want to just like make things just easier. We want to optimize society. It seems like, because right now so many systems across the board are just extremely inefficient, starting with like our tax system, right? I mean, that's a whole debate, but like the point is just our society, just from an engineering perspective, there's so many things that can be optimized right now. And so this is there's a spirit of like there's a demand right now for people to figure out how to just do things that consume less energy and that are able to just achieve the same results, basically. And so this message is just I'm sending a lot of love out to the Chinese people. All the Chinese folk that I've gotten to meet over the years, I've met a few, and all the ones that I've gotten to meet have been really warm to me. I've always felt this warmth from them. And so I've appreciate that very much. They're my Asian brothers from another mother. And as a result, like I'm just sending them. I want to send them good energy because they've given me a lot of good energy. Shout out to my boy Yang, who like, yo, we played like freaking like we were into World War II back in high school. We were like he was showing me some pretty sweet like Eastern Front like simulators, okay? And I met his mother, and I got to eat like authentic Chinese food. It wasn't like Chinese restaurant food. It was like authentic Chinese food. I was eating like this like cooked fish and this like steamed like it was almost like steamed spinach or something like it. It was like a water dish or something like that. So I just want to say big shout out to big shout out to the Chinese folk. They've been good to me. So let's watch this video because these young Asian young folks, a lot of them pretty cute, I must say. They're starting to freak out. Okay, so the millennials over here are not the only ones struggling. Okay, please, yes, I got some more issues.
A woman who is currently unemployed revealed that she hadn't had any contact with the outside world for over a week. She can
Oh, and the crazy thing too, they got hit by COVID the hardest. I'm pretty sure.
expressed that the current employment situation in China is challenging. At 29 years old, she
Like
is
they still have the
unmarried and
lockdown.
childless, which has led many companies to be reluctant to hire her. Despite having 6 years of work experience, she laments feeling less desirable than a recent graduate, causing her great anxiety.
Many might scoff at a monthly salary of 2,000 yuan, thinking, how can wages be this low? That's because you haven't experienced life at the very bottom level.
The woman shared that the prevailing wage in most cities currently ranges.
If there's a book I can recommend right now, if you want to understand more about like Chinese culture, it's I'm trying to remember. I think it was called Taipan, and it was a realistic fiction novel written by a British dude, but it was basically a story about how the English and the Russians were essentially trying to establish a footprint in near China, and this was during the Opium Wars in the 19th century. And so, if you want to get a better understanding as to like why why the Chinese government specifically has been wanting to expand so quickly over the last several decades, it goes all the way back to the Opium Wars of the 19th century, in which basically the British Navy, because of their warships, they were able to control the South China Sea, and so that really affected like the dynasty of China. And essentially, the Chinese were, they lost face. That was like the main theme. That's what I learned, was this idea of having face. And it was a really great story. The protagonist is this Scottish guy. He's a ginger, and you know how they are. They're always just leading from the front, and basically he has a Chinese wife, and so she's like really sassy and just really passionate woman. And it was an incredible story. And unfortunately, there was these typhoons that kicked in, and our protagonist eventually dies. But it was just a very incredible story. So, we move on a little bit from there, and then like about give or take, we'll say about 80 to 100 years later, a little bit less, maybe like I think it's about 70 years after that, you actually have Chinese Civil War. Between the communists and the nationalists, which was brutal. And then, if it wasn't bad enough, you have a Japanese invasion of China, which was like just as bad as when the Nazis invaded the Soviet Union. I mean, like we're talking like just straight up genocidal like stuff. And so all that happened, okay? All of that happened. And then, we eventually entered the Cold War. And then, this is where we learned about like, Americans know about the Korean War, we'll say. But then it, from there on, it's continued on since. And so here we are today. And China essentially has been trying to regain face, basically going all the way back to that. And so, there's a reason why the Chinese government is kind of doing what it's doing. It's not that it's just being like purely, unfair to its people or to anybody. It's doing it because circumstantially China has been constantly abused by like other empires throughout history, and they weren't able to defend themselves. And it was like basically a stance of like no more. And so unfortunately, that's come at a greater cost, right? So, this is a situation, folks, where if you're someone out there that just cares about people, and if you're just a people person, then guess what? This is a great time to like connect. Okay, we got the internet, we got all these resources. Or at the very least, we have science and we have technology. And maybe acquiring the resources is going to be somewhat of a harder challenge. But like, let's get solar panels. Like, let's actually do something to help solve the energy problem first and foremost. Without a doubt, the fundamental problem that most governments deal with is an energy crisis. Okay, and that's when you look at all the major wars. I mean, the Opium War, the reason why it was fought over opium was it was a major commodity. It became a major commodity. But like, a lot of things go back to labor, and labor is nothing more than simply just energy, right? So if you're not using human labor, you're using, horsepower. If you're not using horsepower, you're trying to use something else. So, speaking as someone who likes engineering, more or less, or at least was able to tolerate it enough to at least get a degree in it, just throwing out the idea out there, folks, that, we can solve a lot of the government issues today if we can just create a limitless energy world, okay? And so the world already has limitless energy, right? I mean, even a single atom, for all we know, has like infinite energy, for all we know. I mean, who knows, right? Some astrophysicists or subatomic particle physicists can correct me on that. But the point I'm trying to make here is that, actually access is one thing to know about the potential energy, but then it's another thing to actually access that energy. And so this is where the challenge comes in of like logistics. And so we're dealing with a big logistic problem right now. And so, this is why, you need navies, because navies like protect the convoys that allow you to move resources from point A to point B. So it's time that we can optimize that problem by trying to use more technology. So solar panels, it's already kicking in out here in the United States. But like the rest of the world could use some solar panels, folks. I mean, just imagine. I mean, that's a good starting place. I think I'm also a big proponent for nuclear energy as well. And now that fusion seems to be well on its way, but like that's going to require a lot more security and like a lot more like, you're dealing with just high, not just high energy production, but also high energy like consumption, right? Like building a fusion reactor is not like something you can do in your garage. So, or maybe you can. Some mad scientists could probably, some Rick out there, like Rick and Morty type Rick, could probably do it. But, actually just trying to make this energy accessible. The way we've made the internet accessible to so many people, well, like now let's try to make energy accessible, right? Because even now, for example, YouTube, they're not even making enough money. Apparently, they're starting to charge. They're trying to block all the ad blockers, and it's like because they probably have to pay to like keep these servers up and running. So like, let's get solar panels, or let's find some way to create energy abundance in this world. I'm not talking just purely spiritual energy. I'm talking like physical, energy, like electricity, right? Electricity. So anyways,
Between 1,000
that's something that we could do like in the next 20, 30 years. Like that's something that we can very reasonably do as a species. And we have all the technology, we have the manpower, we have the intelligence. Now it's just a matter of collaborating, right?
to 2,500 yuan, equivalent to 137 to 342 US dollars, according to the latest statistic on
Apparently even like silicon is not even like a scarce resource.
April 1st from the Ministry of Human Resources and Social Security. Only 15 regions have a minimum monthly wage of 2,000 yuan.
So the minimum monthly wage is $274 a month. I think out here in the States you probably need like at least, I would probably guess like a good $1,500 if you want to like break even, right? With like rent, if you want to be able to at least pay for rent, pay for whatever else, rent, food, groceries. We'll say $2,000 a month, given inflation and whatnot. And they for them is 274. Okay, so just some reference there.
Approximately 274 US dollars or more, with Shanghai leading at 2,590 yuan, approximately 354 US dollars. Dongguan's minimum wage stands at 1,900 yuan, around 260 US dollars per month. The reality might be even harsher.
I mean, it doesn't. I mean, obviously, like also the other thing you think just to think about money. Like money is so like weird. It's been inflated and like abused so much by our system that like just keep in mind that like money is not probably the most effective way to measure like the success of a person. I would argue that energy is probably an easier way to measure. Like you can actually count the amount of joules that are stored in like batteries and things like that. Maybe the future will be a world where our global currency is an energy currency, is an energy-based currency, right? Like, which would be really fascinating. Like you're literally buying, you're paying someone in like, you're paying someone in like, I don't know the amount of electricity that can be generated in a battery. Maybe batteries become a currency, or if not batteries, I mean it could be anything, right? But like I would think that's probably the most fairest form of currency available outside of like maybe gold and silver, right?
Will earn an average monthly
Because I mean it's like empirically measurable.
Income of around 1,000 yuan. That's 137 US dollars, and 900 million earn around 2,000 yuan, approximately.
Wow, 900 million Chinese people. We got to also remember the population. Okay, I mean the U.S. I think has like 350, somewhere between 300 and 400 million people, if I'm not mistaken. China, I mean, we're dealing with a much bigger population, and I think geographically speaking, they're about the same size of countries. Like they're about the same size. So out here in the States, we have a lot more space. We it seems like most of us are like pretty fucking loners out here, but like so anyways.
274 US dollars. Even if your monthly income exceeds 10,000 yuan, how much is left after expenses? Probably not much. This is the reality for most families. Today's younger generation is constantly under stress. I sleep at 5 or 6 in the morning, and every day the bags under my eyes are almost dropping to my mouth.
Jeez.
Regarding meals.
Oh yeah, and also what's also crazy is that like the stereotype at least is that like Chinese folk tend to have like, Americans work their asses off. Let's not get it twisted, but I'm pretty sure like out there, like their work ethic is like even more intense. They don't do 8 hours, or they don't even do the 12 hours. I think they do even more.
Anything extravagant. The moment I do, I find my income insufficient. Internet celebrity Mio, who is originally from mainland China, currently resides in Taiwan. Recently, Mio shared a conversation she had with a friend in China who expressed her struggles to make ends meet and lamented being afraid to buy a good meal. This led Mio to feel grateful for living in Taiwan. Mio's friend, a graduate in music, currently works as a music teacher. She conveyed to Mio that regardless of whether she teaches at school or
That looks like a tough job.
the compensation is extremely poor.
Dang, I gotta check my audio quality. Is it good? I don't know if you guys can hear me.
Mentioned the economic downturn
Hopefully you
in
can hear
China,
me.
leading her to feel overwhelmed. Many young people are similarly anxious, losing sleep over these concerns. In China, like Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, and Guangzhou, with ample employment opportunities and higher wage levels, once attracted a significant
That's crazy, man.
number of people from other regions. However, as China's economy continues to stagnate, recent trends show a widespread decline in wages across these major cities,
Bruh.
affecting sectors including financial, technology, and public. Even
Oh gosh, I think I have a commercial.
high-earning
Okay,
bank
never
executives have faced salary cuts of up to 40%. Some analysts believe that this indicates the halting growth trend of the Chinese economy, suggesting the Chinese dream
I
has
should have
not
had a commercial. So whatever.
Bloomberg, based on data from Zhaopin Limited, reported that Shanghai and Beijing witnessed year-on-year recruitment salary decreases of 9% and 6% in the second quarter, respectively, marking the most significant drop since at least 2015. Concurrently, cities like Shenzhen, Guangzhou, and Hangzhou are also experiencing various wage declines. Amid these plummeting wages, white-collar workers in China's major cities have felt the onset of winter. Companies have slashed various benefits, including travel allowances and meal subsidies.
Gotta get the ramen, bro. The ramen life.
Such statistics
Facts.
stand in stark contrast to the official wage increase claims made by the Chinese Communist Party. Nonetheless, videos posted online by Chinese citizens also depict the current situation in China's major cities. The woman in the video, who currently resides in Shenzhen, disclosed that Shenzhen is not what it used to be. The high salaries that once shone brightly are gradually fading away. She stated that once she shared the current situation in Shenzhen, it would be a big shock to everyone. We thought the era of the pandemic was behind us. However, the
Dang.
reality is that in Shenzhen, major corporations are downsizing, small businesses are closing,
Downsizing.
properties aren't renting out, and hotels are
Oh
offering
man,
high
and
job
dude, like you ever
salaries.
see the videos of just like all these empty like, I don't know what's going on out there, man. I'm not gonna speak too much on it because I know that it's a very sensitive subject, but like, if you ever just like do a little research and just like look at some of the videos of just like project incompleted projects or something like that, all I'm gonna say is this, and I was an atheist for a little while. I definitely like kind of played the whole like too cool for that kind of like I don't know, anything more simple. I didn't like authority, right? That's kind of where I've come from. And I'll tell you this, I found myself, especially during the COVID like year, I definitely hit some hella nihilism. Okay, and I'll just say this much. If I'm just really grateful that I can be a nihilist or was a nihilist in at least somewhat of a beautiful area. I don't think I would want to be a nihilist in China, folks. I mean, that is like really tough, man. Really, really, really tough.
Shenzhen in 2023 is not the same as it was a few years ago. During the rapid economic development, it was easy for an assistant
Weigh you
musician
down,
to earn a
man.
monthly salary of between 5,000 and 6,000 yuan, roughly 684 to 821 US dollars. A promotion would see their salary surge to over 10,000 yuan, approximately 1,368 US dollars.
Paper,
But that's no
bro.
longer the case. Quote, from what I've gathered, most companies are laying off staff, reluctant to expand, and the opportunity to earn high salaries has greatly diminished. Ride-hailing services and food delivery services are suffering. New properties aren't selling, and the secondary housing market isn't looking optimistic.
The housing
I feel
market.
the market is
Yeah,
incredibly
they're gonna have we had the 2008 2009 housing market crisis pretty sure China is gonna have its own, or already has. I'm not sure, but it's just basic real estate, just basic economic like ups and downs, and it seems like this down is just gonna be a real freaking kick in the pants.
Another gentleman from Shenzhen revealed an unprecedented outflow of residents from the city, signaling
So
massive
I do really believe it's an energy problem fundamentally. This is why governments like prop everything up, because they just aren't able to actually like supply like the demand, right? And so they try to find shortcuts, but the shortcuts have consequences, because you can't break like the conservation of energy principle. You can't just create energy from thin air. So if you're going to try to like take shortcuts, you eventually are going to like, the system that you have eventually is going to buckle under the pressure, or going to implode or something like that. So yeah, anyways.
Transformations in this historically prosperous metropolis. Quote, 2023 marks a turning point in economic growth. Fewer people want to invest in real estate, and car prices are dropping dramatically. Job hunting is increasingly challenging.
And it's just crazy how like so many countries in the world today are gonna like, it's all happening at the same time. That's the thing. So like it's happening all over the place. And if you know anything about World War II, some people, it's somewhat debatable as to like what caused World War II, but I can tell you this much. For Germany, the Great Depression definitely played a role, because the Great Depression in America was also affecting the Great Depression of Europe, because Europe was paying back the United States after World War One. The French and the British owed money to the U.S. because of the Lend-Lease program, which gave them like all the guns and ammunition and so on that the U.S. was able to build. And then who was paying the French and the British? It was the Germans. And so that definitely like put a sour taste in the German people's mouth, that eventually led to like, having someone like Adolf Hitler be elected into office, and then the rest is history. But then if you also look at the Japanese Empire, the history of the Japanese like evolution in that period was really wild. They were industrializing like so many of the countries were during this time. But they were like having all this infighting. Like politicians were being assassinated like on several sides. It eventually became like very paramilitary. And I think you still had the emperor, or I believe the shogun. I'm not exactly sure, how that works. But in essence, you eventually had basically the military, two different militaries, the Navy and the Army, that were like competing for resources of Japan, and that eventually kind of led to the war. Especially because I think after Japan invaded China in the early 1930s, I think it was 1931 or 32. The year might not be right there, but they invaded Manchuria, which was part of northern China. The world like basically like put like sanctions on them, or maybe it wasn't they didn't put sanctions on them until 1937. In which they decided the Japanese decided to invade the rest of the Chinese mainland, and they left the League of Nations, and so which was basically the version of the UN before the UN was a thing. And even now, the UN today is somewhat questionable as to whether or not they have any real authority. But it's an attempt at creating like a democracy between governments, basically, and it's questionable as to whether or not it's actually worked. Given the whole situation in Israel and Palestine, for example. Like how democratic has that been, right? Anyways, when we go back to Japan, the U.S. did eventually put sanctions on Japan that like blocked off their oil supply, and so the Japanese government like calculated like if we don't actually conquer new resources, if we don't take the Dutch East Indies, which actually had Borneo, which was a oil-rich region, then we're literally going to run out of oil. And then if we run out of oil, we're going to have to like deindustrialize. And so the Japanese gambled, and they decided to go to war. And so it's just something to be aware of right now. I'm not saying that like World War III is going to happen. And I'm not here to like support that or be a proponent of that. But, it's one of those cases where you like, if you put a starving animal, doesn't matter what kind of animal, but if you put a starving animal in a corner, it's going to become more and more like, it's going to turn to more and more extreme. It's going to turn to more extreme situations in order to get itself out of that problem. Okay, and I think the classic example is like if you have someone, living in the ghetto, and they literally have a starving child, let's say, or they have a starving family, like, don't be surprised if they're going to start robbing people in order to get money. You know what I mean? Like, it's not that they're necessarily an evil person, but, difficult circumstances can lead to very short-term decision-making outcomes that may involve bad decisions, right? I mean, that's just what it is. And I would say, sure, it's bad to do these things, but keep in mind that survival takes priority over good. That's really the bottom line. Survival, for all animals, including us humans, takes priority over good. Okay, and that's really, like, I would say that that's some basic form of, like, basic evil, right? It's just that survival takes priority over good. And so let us not get to a point as a civilization where we have to, like, be desperate times calls for desperate measures, and, like, let's not actually turn to like old ways of surviving, essentially, in which we waged war. We know enough history right now as a species, and if not, I'm just making this video to educate y'all and let y'all know that, like, you want to be able to, like, make life, as far as the resources, easy for you and your community, so that you don't have to deal so much with that survival desperation, right? Because people panic, and when you panic, there's fear, and when there's fear, it can lead to a lot of bad outcomes, right? Starting with, like, violence and things like that. So I'm just letting y'all know that, okay? And so, don't get angry when if a government or a nation decides to turn to radical measures in order to obviously, I mean, getting angry is the natural reaction, but, like, try to see the bigger picture. Try to see the reason for why so and so person got so emotionally desperate to begin with. Okay, think about that, because there's a reason behind every emotion. Let's continue.
Even professions like food delivery drivers, which used to be short in supply, are now filled. Businesses are struggling, with layoffs and pay cuts becoming the norm. More individuals are opting to complete postgraduate studies and civil service exams, and even salaries within the system are under threat. The most impacted are the prominent financial and technology sectors amid the salary reductions in China. Even relatively stable government positions aren't spared, affecting a significant portion of China's middle class. Consequently, many are contemplating leaving major cities. Bloomberg interviewed 18 individuals.
Shoot, man, I left the major city myself. I had to get out of there. I needed a break.
Sectors, revealing the harshness of the Chinese job market, which seems to be worse than the official youth unemployment rate. White-collar workers are increasingly concerned about job security and personal expenditures. Even though there's rising discontent among workers of all age groups, many still accept substantial pay cuts, reduced benefits, and working longer hours for job security. A university recruitment officer in China commented, quote, "Graduates from 2022 and 2023 are finding it challenging to secure jobs. Even after the pandemic subsided this year, the employment situation seems worse than in previous years. Many firms are cutting back, including the once thriving internet industry, which transitioned from expansion to maintaining the current workforce." The layoff wave in China's internet sector began in 2022 and persisted. Reuters reported that amidst stricter government regulations, repeated pandemic outbreaks, and China-US tensions, big Chinese corporations' profits are below expectations, leading to recurring layoffs. Mainland Chinese media reports that Alibaba, Tencent, and Kuaishou collectively reduced their workforce by 16,901 people in the first half of this year. Alibaba's annual
I don't know if that's a lot.
increased by about the same amount last year, with 11,000 people in the first half of this year alone, marking a record decline.
Okay, there you go. It's a record.
In Shanghai,
Apparently, it's a new record.
shared with Bloomberg that many laid-off employees are willing to accept a new job at a pay cut of up to 50%.
Dang! So it's like, imagine getting paid like 20 an hour, and, like, you're getting you're willing to, like, work for just $10 an hour all of a sudden, just to, like, keep things financially afloat.
Employers, meanwhile, have become more conservative in offering raises and promotions. The CCP's stringent pandemic measures over the past 3 years slowed down the economy, putting additional pressure on the already tight corporate budgets. On top of dwindling profits, many businesses are now forced to comply with the government's push for common prosperity, which involves salary caps, pay cuts, and reduced benefits. For
Tough.
instance, CITIC Securities, a top Chinese investment bank, slashed the base salaries of some senior employees by 15%. CICC, on the other hand, mandated its senior staff to fly economy class and choose only the cheapest train tickets. Eason, a business manager at a commercial bank in Shanghai, experienced a 10% salary cut despite his
I just want to go back to that.
and choose only the cheapest train tickets. Eason,
I just like when I see cities like these giant cities, I think I always wonder, like, will it be a future where like these cities just become like the next, like pyramids 2.0, I do wonder that, like I wouldn't want civilization to like completely implode. I would rather want it just to like adapt and change for the better. But like I do wonder if like, just like these giant skyscrapers that you see. I think it was Blade Runner, I believe it was. Or there's a lot of science fiction films out there, but I think Blade Runner is definitely one of them. I think another one, it may be like Ghost in the Shell, although that one seems to have a still functional city. But there's still parts of the city that seem to be like completely abandoned. And it's just one of those cases of like, man, it would be sad to see so many big cities just be abandoned because they just weren't sustainable, But we'll see what happens. But I wouldn't be surprised if like the future of humanity, apparently you can grab like all the human beings on Earth and like you can put them on like in a single region that is like pretty much the size of like an American state. I don't know which state it would be, like I don't know, state of Georgia or something, or Texas, I don't know. But basically like the human global population is just not as big as people think. And the planet is just like much bigger than we think, and we're just kind of like these little like microorganisms living on the surface. And so, yeah, I mean, like, I'm just curious to know what the future of humanity is going to look like. But I do think we can definitely create a better world for sure.
a business manager at a commercial bank in Shanghai.
We can definitely do it. We definitely can do it. It's just going to require. It's going to require a few fundamental changes, like for sure, in the way we like the way we work as a group, probably, or maybe not. Maybe it's just like we're just going to keep doing things. But I don't know. When I think about like AI and just like we may be hitting a point of like criticality where like it's like yeah, we're gonna have to like change at a fundamental level. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Despite his outstanding performance and the company's double-digit growth last year, he remarked, quote, while the authorities encourage...
We're all going to have to like meditate 15 minutes a day or something. I don't know.
...household consumption, on one hand, they're also imposing pay cuts and caps. Maintaining salary stability in financial institutions is becoming a challenge. A senior executive at a Hong Kong bank that does business with mainland clients noted that due to the reduction in bonuses, employees...
I'm definitely going to do a little meditation tonight. Your boy here got to keep up with that for sure.
Morale has suffered, implying that China's financial sector is lying down.
Just like I gotta empty the tank.
It's unmotivated and passive. A manager from a new media company in Hangzhou disclosed that a third of their staff were laid off over the past 3 years, with more expected in the future. Quote, before the pandemic, our goal was to go public, said Mr. Huang. Now the consensus is to seize any opportunity to survive. Entrepreneurs of small and medium-sized enterprises are even more pessimistic. Several have recently told the New York Times about their dwindling confidence in China's economic and national future. One car parts wholesaler mentioned a 15% year-on-year revenue drop in the first half of the year, with 2 of his 4 stores closing. He shared,
dude, another thing to point out is just like, I mean, China, I think fundamentally, its economy is fundamentally capitalist, but I guess it's communist in some ways because it still has a lot of centralization. I believe like all the major corporations are just really an extension of the government. Like they work directly for the government. But in every other sense, they're capitalist. The thing about capitalism that's just really weird. I'm not a Marxist, by the way. I've realized that the Marxists like. Their economics just fail time and time again. But capitalist economics is also kind of weird too. And I think the thing The central theme about capitalists that I find weird is that they seem to do a great job with optimization. They know how to like get the most bang for buck, right? They're able to produce the most amount of cars with the least amount of expenses and the most amount of profit. But things become weird when all of a sudden you're just building something that like no one actually gives a fuck about. You're building like cars that no one's buying. Okay, so yes, you've optimized the production of cars, but like why bother when we have enough cars? We have enough cars. We have plenty of cars. Stop producing fancy new cars every year that are a pain in the ass to fix. They're not even easy to repair anymore. Like that doesn't make sense. I mean, so it's like optimization in one way, but like they've disregarded other like fundamental aspects to the design, and so it's like over engineering in a way. Which when I think about like World War II German tanks, the German Panzer tanks, a lot of their tanks were over engineered, and they're very luxurious machines, sure, but like you didn't need a lot of that extra stuff. You could have produced just more tanks and gotten the same results. But anyways, the point I'm just trying to make is that capitalism is weird in how it focuses on producing things that may actually not provide as much value as they are claimed to. And so that's the only thing, I think that's the only like Achilles heel of capitalism, is that you kind of have these runaway production lines that are extremely optimized, but they're producing things that people don't actually need right now. Okay, like capitalism does not produce hugs and like emotional support. I don't know, something that's like something that probably more people want than anything else. And it's like capitalism hasn't been able to provide that. So and then so then you have all these like Marxists and socialists that like are like power to the people, right? Because they got the passion there, right? But then you end up with like things get really bad with the history of communism. I won't go there in this video, but like whether you're leaning more on the Marxist camp or the capitalist camp, just keep in mind that these ideas have been fighting for several centuries. We're now in the third century that these wars have been fought. Okay, it started in the first industrial period in the 19th century. Throughout the 1800s, there were wars being fought over these ideas. Then World War I and World War II, World War I like wipes out the monarchy of Europe. World War II basically like is essentially the rise of socialism in Europe, and you got these like major nations fighting one another, the National Socialists, the Communists, fighting themselves in this brutal Eastern Front. After that, you have the Cold War, which essentially is the capitalists versus the communists. The Cold War ended, right? It ended in when the Soviet Union collapsed. But then, it's been 30 years later. Things have definitely changed dramatically. But like we're still in the aftermath of a world where the fundamental optimization of society has yet to be figured out. Okay, so this is not just purely a political science problem. It's not purely an economic problem or just purely a social problem. It's a combination of all of it. Okay, and so we're still trying to figure it out, is what I'm trying to say. Humanity hasn't figured it out yet, an optimized society. And so, that's a challenge, for anyone who watches this video, we could use some help on that because we have yet to find a system that truly seems to work for the people. Anyways, going to continue.
Is clueless about the next
people of the world.
I once believed our nation would only get better. The New York Times interviewed Sun Junli, the owner of a chain of coffee shops. She benefited from China's economic boom over the past decade, escaping poverty and becoming wealthy by opening clothing stores and restaurants. In 2018, her income reached $8 million US.
Right, that's smart.
A prime example of realizing the Chinese dream. However, Chinese banks later started to limit loans to small businesses. The outbreak of the pandemic further deteriorated her business situation. By November 2020, she had accumulated debts of $1.5 million.
Ouch.
To pay her loans, she was blacklisted as a defaulter in 2021.
Dang, 1.5 million.
Employees in China's so-called new economy sectors have also been affected. According to a survey, in industries like electric vehicles, batteries, and solar and wind energy, the average salary for new employees in June dropped 3.6% year-on-year, down to 13,755 yuan, about 1,882 US dollars. This is the most significant decrease since 2012. 2015. Amidst challenging times for private enterprises, many job seekers from the mainland have been flocking to take civil service exams and applying for public institution positions in recent years, hoping to find stability within the CCP.
Yeah, you're trying to find a government job to find stability. That makes sense. And yet, feels like a lot of governments today are just not the most stable institutions, truly. I mean, the only thing that seems to really hold them together are the militaries, right? It's the monopoly on violence that seems to hold the militaries together. I mean, like the United States, for example, the only reason why the U.S. dollar is valuable is because the United States has the most powerful military in the world. That's the only thing that's keeping the U.S. dollar relevant. We're not on the gold standard anymore. That was long gone. We got all this inflation, but like as soon as I guess the world like loses faith in the U.S. military and its ability to perform, then things are gonna change. So, this is something for everybody to think about. This issue is not gonna be resolved until the people actually have a say in their own lives. So, stop. What I'm trying to say is stop just like being a drone. Stop being a gearhead. This is, if there's any time in the world to think critically about what you think you can do to help the world and help yourself, help your community, yada yada yada, this is a time to do it. And it's only going to happen when you're able to create something that's more valuable than what's currently in existence. And so we need innovators, right? This is an era for innovation. This is an era for optimization, in my opinion.
System. However, even these traditionally guaranteed stable jobs.
But the last thing I'm going to say on that, and this is something that I'm still trying to work on myself. But it's like one of the reasons why a lot of people like conform to the masses is because it's like a hive mind of fear. It's like high school or whatever. Like you're afraid of being judged by people around you because it's like you don't want to stick out. You don't want to stick out you don't want to be the highest nail among all the nails because you're going to be the first one that gets hit, right? And that frankly comes from like psychologically, like, we're tribal creatures, right? We've come from hunter gatherers. We're used to working in groups, and so it was constantly the case that we wanted to conform to the tribe, to the group, because we didn't want to get kicked out. If we got kicked out, we're going to have to survive against the wolves and whatever else out in the cold or by ourselves. And essentially it was like the fear of death. So psychologically, we humans are like very comfortable just kind of being invisible, just kind of like conforming to the crowd. We're getting lost in the crowd. But guess what? If that crowd is like walking to like off a cliff, then everybody's going to walk off of a cliff, right? And then we all, anyways, the point I'm trying to make is that this is the time to find who you really are. Be original. We need originality right now because currently the system as it stands today, which is really just a bunch of people, the system can't even sustain itself. Whatever the crowd is doing to sustain itself, to feed itself, is not enough right now. So we got to find a better way, and we have a lot of variety. Probably the greatest strength according to Alan Watts, the greatest strength of humanity is our diversity, right? And so that's a challenge. There's a challenge because you have all these different types of people, all different personalities, all different ideas and philosophies, you name it, and we're gonna try to find a way for us to all cooperate together. Are you kidding me? This is like fundamentally why we've had all these like wars, religious wars, you name it. So it's a big challenge, but it is a challenge that can be resolved.
Jobs are showing signs of strain. Bloomberg's interviews with 10 local government officials revealed that the Chinese government is cutting many employees' bonuses.
I mean, theoretically. How about that?
Cash allowances and base salaries. A report from Caixin Media shows that in the first half of 2022, civil servants across China experienced waves of salary cuts, with reductions averaging 20.
But, maybe even practically too. You never know. You just never know.
To 30%. Coastal provinces like Guangdong, Zhejiang, and Jiangsu were impacted the most. Local government officials in southern Jiangsu and Ningbo reported salary reductions of about 25% and 1/3, respectively. Jason Wu is a prison guard in a city in northern Guangdong. Since 2021, his bonuses have been steadily decreasing, leading to an overall 15% reduction in his compensation, with no official explanation provided. Public servants in poorer provinces and cities have been hit even harder. For instance, a debt-ridden official from a northern province mentioned his overall salary was slashed by 35%. Another official stated he hasn't received a bonus for 3 consecutive years. Some civil servants were even asked to repay up to 5 years' worth of bonuses or cash subsidies, significantly reducing their monthly income. Analysts suggest that as China's real estate crisis deepens and the revenue from land sales, a significant source of local government finance, declines sharply, coupled with hefty expenditures on continuous pandemic controls and nucleic acid tests, local government debt has skyrocketed. Goldman Sachs estimates that the debt of China's local governments now stands at approximately 90.
Wow. So this is Goldman Sachs. I believe they're some kind of investing group. They do all these analyses, economic analyses, and keep in mind that no one really exactly knows what's going on, myself included. But essentially, it says that the debt of China's local governments now stands at approximately 94 trillion renminbi. That's 13 trillion US dollars, which is weird because it's like, wait, doesn't the United States owe money to China? And now they're saying that the local governments of China are in debt too. So is everybody in the world just in debt right now? Is the whole world in debt? Is the whole world in debt, including China? So if everybody's in debt, then how do you pay that back? And I think what we're beginning to realize is no one's going to pay it back. So if no one pays it back, then the house of cards just comes crashing down, basically. And so maybe that's going to be like a big reset. And yeah, maybe we are going to need the help of some much smarter mathematician AI, to just create a better way to optimize. Because if all the governments in the world are in debt today, then that means all the people in the world are in debt too. And then, that means that the whole freaking civilization is in debt, which I guess would physically manifest in the form of a crumbling infrastructure, or food shortages, or supply problems. I don't really know the exact details there, but I'm by the way, I'm not trying to make this video be scary. Let's not just slip into fear and just start freaking out. But it would be in our best interest to at least recognize we can see the storm approaching, we can see the flashes, we can see the dark clouds, we can see the wall of rain. Okay, so it's maybe we should build some shelter. Maybe we should not just prepare for the storm, but also prepare for what we're going to do after the storm too. And it's just preparation. It's preparation 101. It's just winter's coming, so let's stock up on some wood. Let's be smart about it. Let's be pragmatic about it.
84 trillion yuan, about 13 trillion US dollars. The Wall Street Journal reported that, against a backdrop of economic slowdown, some cash-strapped local governments are resorting to profit-driven law enforcement, intensifying fines and penalties for minor violations like traffic offenses and business and safety regulations.
So that's the video, folks. I'm going to stop here. I really hope this video was informative. Thank you so much for watching, and I say, just keep fighting the good fight, trust the process, and know that there's a silver lining in every storm. So thank you so much. Peace out.